Hello, everyone. I'm very, very happy to introduce a very good friend of mine, um, Margot Smith. Margot and I have known each other for, well, actually a very long time, isn't
Hmm.
it, Margot?
It is. I was kind of counting back the years and thought, wow,
Yeah.
it's
Is it 20 nearly?
20. It's nearly 20. I think it was 2006 when we were together
Yeah.
on a
Okay.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Margot and I did a Drew Yoga teacher training course together in Sydney and Kincumber, and we travelled from the Albury area. How many times a year? Was it
Oh,
times a year or
I feel
four?
like it was more. Yeah. It was for 6 days at a time. I remember that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it might
And it
have
was
been
fun.
three.
Could
It
have
was.
been. Yeah.
We
So,
used to live in. We had a live-in
yeah,
course.
it was like a
Mm.
retreat.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
definitely.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's how we know each other. And we traveled a couple of times up and down and we spent that time and we've both been involved in Drew Yoga and we share the same friends in Drew because we study
Mm.
together. But today, Margot is going to share with us, well, I'm going to ask her lots of questions about horse medicine. That's what we're talking about because Margot is a horsewoman and she is very well trained as an equine assisted therapist or doing equine assisted therapy. And of course, she's a counsellor. So I, of course, know very little about this and I'm extremely curious about. I've just heard some fantastic stories actually about how, doing the therapeutic work with clients and having the horses as part of that is just so incredibly transformative. And how does this work?
Yeah.
So tell us about equine assisted therapy.
Wow. Yeah, it's such a a big field because in all the different countries they kind of talk about it differently.
Yeah.
Um, and in Australia, it's a modality that's used as a therapeutic kind of model, as part of a practice. Maybe if you're a counsellor, an occupational therapist, social worker,
Mm.
psychologist, or someone working in the mental health field, and doing this training helps to bring, integrate the horse presence and also nature. So, just that the fact that it's not room based and it's outside in nature brings its own kind of therapeutic effect. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that that combined just provides such a rich source of, like a resource for people to either build for themselves or just having that experiential learning. Um, it gets felt. It's such a felt sense, and all the senses are involved. It's more about coming into the body with an experience rather than talk therapy. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of kind of different things that weave into the actual therapy sessions.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a very popular and growing field. And I remember when I was teaching yoga and meditation, there was a part of me. Actually, I went to a horsey retreat, and I was, like, we were sharing about stuff, and I said, "Oh, I'm in a dilemma because I love my yoga and meditation. I love teaching it, but I love all the horse, things that I do, and creating relationships with horses and getting to understand them better and become the type of person that a horse wants to hang around." That's basically been my big goal, because horses will tell you through their body language very easily whether they want you in their energy field or not. And
Wow.
and I said, "Oh, I just love both these areas, and I feel like I have to choose which one am I going to go into, which field." And then I remember a friend saying, "Why do you have to choose? Just join them together, like bring it together." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yes." And I hadn't really heard about the equine assisted therapy field very much, but that sort of sparked a seed that grew. And of course, as the universe provides, the
Yeah.
information and books, and this is kind of before podcasts, before
Yes.
much
Yeah.
social media or internet stuff. So,
Yeah.
somewhere in my heart, something was growing towards that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess you have to have horses, obviously, and you've got a place, you've got your own place where
Mm-hmm.
you do the work with clients.
Yeah, yeah. That again has been just a dream come true, because it's not easy to own acreage. Now more than ever in the last few years, with the property, you know, rising, and we lived in a property for about 12 years, and this is kind of when I was getting interested. I still had little kids, and I used to just dream about where I would put, like a space to do yoga and the horses, and I just had it all kind of figured out. But there were so many other limitations in that space where we were at the time.
Mm.
And it wasn't until 2016, and all that time over years, I kind of just used to look at the real estate, look at everything, and go, "Oh, how cool would it be?" But there's no way I was going to shift my husband from from this kind of beautiful beef farm that he'd developed, and it was kind of like a hobby farm for him. But unbelievably, we saw this place, and unbelievably, he agreed to move, to try it out, because I just kept saying, I can see my dream happening here. And
Wow.
it sounds funny, but when we first came towards the property, we had to cross a creek. And so I just fell in love with the creek, first of all. And
Yeah.
then as we were climbing up the rise towards the property, I could see all these rocks in the paddock. And then that just made me, go, "Oh my God, look at all the rocks." And my husband, being a farmer, was like, "Rocks don't make money." Like they take up room where you could grow grass.
And I guess you could see yourself doing the warrior pose or
Oh, that's right.
crane or something on top of the rock.
That's it. Yeah, it's so wild.
I
But
love it.
anyway, as everything fell into place, we moved here in 2016,
Yeah.
2017.
So you're at
And
Wurrigi, just outside of
yeah,
Beechworth and close to
yes,
Yak. Yeah.
yes.
So
That was
you.
another part with the location, because it was
Mm.
our other place was over an hour to get to, kind of like the end of an area in the Middle
Yeah.
Valley. And here there's you can just go either way: Wang, Beechworth,
Yeah.
Wodonga, and Yak.
Mm.
There's just such a variety of places and people. The population is much more,
Yeah.
available.
Could you describe for me, like if I was going to come and do equine assisted therapy with you,
Mm,
what would happen? Like, how does it work? Like,
yeah, yeah. Well, we'd have a little intake and a discussion, probably over the phone
yeah.
or a Zoom, and get acquainted, and kind of find out what is drawing you to coming. And it could be a lot about curiosity. There could
Mm.
be something going on in your life, possibly relational, or to do with mental health or physical health. It
Mm.
could be, coping skills, or there's so many things. But whatever it is in your life that is, perhaps you're feeling like you need some resources, or ways to adapt. Um, that's a great way to kind of look at coming for a session, to make it available for what your specific needs are, because it is about a relational experience. So you're having and I set it up in a way that it's going to be a safe relational experience. So whether you've had horse experience or not, no horse experience, I can change the environment to suit you, so that safety is the first kind of big
Okay.
important aspect.
So I'm going to come out to the property.
Mm,
You're going to meet me.
yeah.
And we've already had a chat on the phone, and I've sort of talked to you about whatever's going on for me just briefly,
Mm,
because you're not doing a phone counseling session. It's more I come and how do you take me from there to interaction in the
hmm.
space where the horses are? Like
Yeah,
what happens there?
yeah. It can look it can kind of unfold differently for each person, but the main part is to kind of have an introduction to the space, to the environment. And what amazingly happens, which I'm so blessed and used to my environment that I live here, the first thing people notice is how peaceful it is, how
Yeah.
quiet. There's no traffic. They can hear the birds, they can feel the breeze. So before we even get anywhere near the back gate where the horses are, they've already started to notice and feel, yeah, feel the effects of the environment.
Yeah.
Most people are coming from a busy place or a town or a busy family life, and so I think that that's one of the most precious things that the Donington Farm offers, is that it's almost like stepping into a sanctuary or some kind of refuge.
Mm.
So we take notice of everything that is unfolding at the time. So it's kind of like a here and now process,
Yeah.
um, and we whatever is coming up for the person is like what is the juice. That's
Mm.
kind of what we start to work with. So we might be able to talk about what that's like for the person to notice the quietness and the peace, and where that resonates in their body, and what they might usually feel, what's life like usually for them. And
Mm.
so by the time we get towards the back gate, I usually have the horses in their own space, and it's quite a big area, and there's trees, there's rocks, and they're basically just doing their thing, which is eating. They don't yeah, they might be resting under the trees if it's a warm day or whatever. So I love to invite the participant to spend some time observing what they can notice about the horses, the environment, the interaction between them. And sometimes I might even up the ante a bit, and put some hay out in the paddock, and the participant will notice the interaction more about what's happening between the relationship with each horse,
Mm.
like one that's kind of more food oriented, or dominant in a way of wanting that pile of hay, and uses his body to let the others know. Yeah, so it right from the get-go, there's this relational kind of experience happening in front of the person, and they can get to understand what's happening in their nervous system when this is going on. So we kind of go, oh, how is that for you? Like when you saw that brown horse kind of kick his back legs out to say go away. And
Mm.
so even before we get in, and the session might even happen without going into the horses. Do you know what I mean? Like if someone
Right.
is like at their window of tolerance for themselves. And the thing is that awareness is what brings choice. So if we're not aware, or we just kind of barge in and are beyond our own threshold,
Yeah.
sometimes that's how we walk through life. But because we do like a safety and well-being check, and I talk about awareness being a safety mechanism, so having to be aware of your environment. And we're on a farm, there's other animals that are on the land, and without trying to scare people about snakes and things
Yeah.
like that, but it's actually just bringing people back into the reality of what our environment is like and what's happening in our inner environment.
So it sounds like, correct me if I've got this wrong. it sounds like you're getting people through paying attention to all these details in the environment and with the horses and what's going on in their body
Mm-hmm.
and their reactions to what they're seeing and feeling
Yeah.
is leading you, or you're using that to invite them to explore their own personal stuff.
Yes, it's amazing because the more that I try to plan a session and think, oh, I think this person will, you know, they will benefit from grooming the horse or, you know, leading the horse or whatever it might be, that always goes out the window because the horses almost intuitively, you know, just dictate what's going to happen. And
Okay.
it can be because of the environment themselves. You know, say if there's wind, it's a really windy day, and a lot of people know or have seen horses that are a little bit more flighty in the wind, you know, and things kind of blow up. They're more vigilant. They're more like what's going on. So even the way the horses are presenting themselves. So the way I like to look at it is your nervous system is meeting another being's nervous system. Now, in the world of humans, we get so good at masking our nervous system or kind of like, you know, putting, yeah, just being inauthentic or incongruent.
Yeah.
But for a horse, they can feel the energetic field of everything around it because for, you know, 6,000 years, that's kept them safe. That's
Yeah.
what they've had to survive with, understanding what the environment is, you know,
Yeah.
providing around them. And with that tuned in sense, they can also feel if we're pretending to be safe or, you know, brave or whatever, because when there's an incongruence, they don't feel safe. And that,
Yes.
so when
Okay.
they don't feel safe, safety is the number one thing. They will do whatever it takes if, you know, they're healthy and they're free and able to move, and that they will do whatever it takes to remain safe. Now, of
Yeah.
course, just like humans, sometimes they've been in an environment where that safety isn't allowed or provided for them, or they're not allowed to express themselves, or, you know, like
Mm.
a lot of like being a captive animal.
Mm.
So I'm talking about, yeah, really healthy horses. That's kind of the ethical way to work with this model as well. That
Yeah.
the horses are mostly free, so they can choose to interact with a person, and of course, safety comes into that as well. So it might be a matter of, and not every horse is suited to this type of work.
Yeah.
That horses can still be observed, like in a paddock or something, if they're not attuned to being with humans and things like that. But
Mm.
yeah, there's quite a process to go through to work out whether the horse is suitable and safe, and
Yeah.
also feels, you know, it's a two-way thing. It's really about the horse's well-being as well as the participant.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I don't know where we went there.
That's all right. I I remember hearing somebody say that the horses actually do healing on the participants
Mm-hmm.
through by being close to them. What's your
Mm.
take on that?
Mm. Um, I feel like we can project onto the horses a little about what we, you know, think might be happening or what we want or desire to be happening. But I
Mm.
definitely feel that they are just being themselves. Like the horse isn't going, oh, I want to heal this person.
That's
but
good.
yeah, but their presence and the fact that they are an energetic being with a huge heart field, electromagnetic field, much bigger. I can't remember whether it's 6 times bigger than a human, something like that.
Yeah.
So they have you know, this heart feel that when they feel safe, when they feel um, connected, when they feel calm, that's their healthy well-being life. And they know how to get themselves back into that place. So if they're in that space, they might just feel drawn to somebody. Like an example is my beautiful Brumby, who's not here with us anymore, but he was very skeptical and very reserved about interacting with humans. He's been like that all his life nearly, but something would happen to him when somebody was vulnerable, when somebody wasn't trying to tell him what to do or forcing a connection with him. If he was just left to be himself. And for this example, I'm thinking it was quite amazing, actually. I was sitting outside under the trees, and the horses were in the area, but they were just, further away. And this lady was telling me about her grief story, and she was actually grieving for her parent that was going through dementia. And it was kind of that type of grief of the future and the grief of the past that was no longer. And anyway, she was talking quite a lot, but she was opening up and she was able to kind of articulate. And then I looked over and I saw Mr. Chips, my Brumby's name was, and he kind of like just turned his head and looked a little bit interested, and just on his own volition he walked over. And this lady wasn't scared because she has horses, so it wasn't like she was getting scared or unsafe. And he walked in front of her and put his muzzle towards her chest, just like that, and kind of looked a bit sleepy. And then she had her hands in her lap, and then he put his muzzle just so gently in her hands, and then kind of moved his head back a little bit and just stood there holding space, just silent, beautiful. Now, I can't talk for myself, but this beautiful lady she got really emotional about that. It was a release for her. And afterwards she said that was so healing. And it was like I was being heard, like I was listening to her, I was present, but some being that, that didn't need to come near her or show anything, came towards her and just stood there and held space.
Wow.
So to me, that's the way the healing happens. And it happens kind of on their own terms. Sometimes the healing might be like a kick up the butt.
Literally.
Literally. Yeah, because one beautiful participant was really trying to get very smoochy with one of the horses, and he has boundaries about smoochiness. He's not a really smoochy-woochy horse. And so she was kind of a bit shocked, and she's like, oh, what's he doing, And we were talking about boundaries. And so for her, the healing came that she realized how she doesn't have good boundaries and how she needed to be a little bit more like this horse and create some boundaries in her life where it was okay to say no. So the boundaries are just about saying, no, that's not okay. Or yes, I allow, and it's so much about consent, consent as a human, consent as a horse. It's all that is really important to bring in as part of the process.
Wow, that sounds quite incredible, actually. And I'm just thinking about a process I'm familiar with where you have a little bit of distance. So almost with the horses, it's kind of like a third person is in the space, so to speak. and so you can see things from that distance. It sort of just dropped in for me, so thank you.
No, you're
That's
exactly right, because through our training we were taught that it's a triad. Like you have, it's like you've got two co-facilitators,
yeah,
and the client. So the relationship is not only, and sometimes it takes the heat off having a relationship just with this, person that's asking questions, and then there's the horse as well. So
yeah,
sometimes my job is just to be present and observe, and then share back what I saw, and then see what the participant felt or experienced from it. So there's so much um, in that triad interaction, and it
yeah,
really helps with rapport building as well,
yeah,
having the equine partner, um, and there's a lot of trust involved. Also,
mm,
the participant is learning and watching how I interact with my horse. So then there's like kind of modeling consent, perhaps, or modeling a
yeah,
boundary,
yeah.
modeling healthy relationships, healthy expressions. There's so much that
Mm.
can happen in that space.
That sounds amazing because a lot of the time we want X, but we have no data to get X.
Mm,
So, what you're saying about modeling for the client to observe your interaction with the horse, I mean, that's golden.
yeah.
Margot, what got you on this journey of,
Mm.
what took you into this sort of work?
Oh gosh. Well, I've been blessed to have horses for nearly 40 years. I kind of realized that they've just been out my windows, whatever places we've lived.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in the city. So I don't know, figure that. But funnily enough, when I was young, I used to pretend that my dragster bike, or those bikes back in the day, was my
Yeah.
horse. Yeah. and
Mm.
and I just would just be free. Like, we lived in caravan parks and we lived in so many different places, but I was able to be free and ride wherever I wanted to on my bike, and that was my horse. So
Yeah.
even from this kind of city kid life, um, I associated horses with freedom. And fortunately, I met a beautiful man that was a horse lover, and had owned horses. And I don't know whether the attraction was the horses or him. Don't tell him that. No.
Now, I've met your husband. I'm pretty sure it wasn't the horses.
Well, as a young, how old was I? 18, 19-year-old, yeah, I became pretty smitten because he
Yeah.
was a little bit like the man from Snowy River to me.
Yeah.
And he's dry as a bone. And no, and anyway, we both kind of developed a love for horses. I used to just want to go to trail rides, or go on these places where you can hire horses for an hour. And I spent my teenage, years doing that, and even kind of just riding. I was friends with his sisters, my husband's sisters, and I'd do anything, go for a ride with them. And one day, actually, um, my husband, unbeknown to me, was milking cows with his brother, and I was riding down the road thinking I was pretty good, and I promptly fell off. and and that night there was some social thing on, and that was kind of our first meeting, and he said, "Oh, how's the ground?"
I love it.
So I actually learned to ride by hanging around him and his sisters in a little while. Just developed such a love for horses, and yeah, they'd been in our life, and with our children
Yeah.
as well. But one of the big, huge turning points, I guess, was, I say turning points because it was um, something that I never would have thought would happen to us as a family. And we had 3 daughters aged 8, 6 and 3 at the time. And we were involved in a freak accident where our middle daughter, Georgia, was killed suddenly by a falling tree. And, that just, there were other people injured. I was injured. There was just this mixture of grief and disbelief and despair. Just, our whole lives were changed forever in that single moment. And amazingly enough, I was supposed to be going with my horse to a clinic that day, that very day the accident happened. And the weather was so atrocious that the instructor called it all off. And instead of going to that clinic, we took the kids to look at the snow with another couple of families. And that's when the accident happened. So it just was. I feel like I was just in a grief and trauma place for years after that. And one of my solace times was to just go out to where my horse was. And at first it was like, I'm never going to be able to ride you again. I'm never going to be able to do anything that feels good anymore. Like life is over basically for me. But then eventually I felt like just being with him was enough, and just kind of being in his presence. And eventually I noticed that I think it might have even been 18 months after, it was a long time after, that 5, 10, 15 minutes would go by where I was involved with, say, grooming him or brushing him, and I had a moment of relief from my grief, like where I wasn't thinking or having flashbacks or whatever. I was totally in the present moment. And about the same time, I started reading Eckhart Tolle books, The Power of Now, and really starting to understand how healing the present moment is. And the horses are always living in the present moment. So they became kind of my mentors and my guides for being in the present moment. That's kind of how I got interested in. I read some books about relationships with horses rather than developing relationships rather than a dominating kind of you're the slave, I'm the master kind of a relationship with horses. And I became so interested in that, especially after everything that I felt they'd given me. Yeah.
Can I ask you, is this an area so the horses have been really a journey for healing really for you and teachers to come into the now? Do you find that people who've experienced loss of some kind are the people who tend to come to you or come for equine assisted therapy, or is it people from all walks of life with all backgrounds and challenges?
Yeah, it's interesting because I really feel like that's the area, grief and loss, that mostly coming from my own lived experience, that I can offer support and give that kind of place for people to heal with grief or navigate what's going on for them. But the universe works in funny ways, and I'm actually just getting a beautiful variety of different people, clients that are coming through from children with autism and mental health issues, young adults, and then people my age or women. I think I've only had one gentleman at the moment, and I'm really like just learning from people and participants and being open to that the horses don't care who we are and what we do for a living or what illness we have or that there's no labels for horses. So when people just show up, it's about being a human, and it's about, finding those ways to discover what calmness is to them, to discover what connection is,
Yeah.
discover what compassion and self-compassion is, consent. I call
Yeah.
these kind of my C's, these beautiful words, and then collaboration. And, it just evolves like that because we're there without the labels.
Yeah.
Sometimes the labels can help give us a little bit of a guide to where we, what we might need or whatever. But nature and the horses, it's like none of that matters. None of
Yeah.
that matters.
It sounds, just sitting here as you speak about the process that you're using, it sounds so, I don't want to say it sounds magical. It doesn't sound magical. It sounds deeply respectful and
Mm,
gentle. Sounds
yeah,
beautiful. Mm.
yeah, I like that, Karen. I've never kind of thought of it in those terms as gentle and respectful, but it is actually, because so much of our world is about harshness and the doing,
Mm.
achieving, and really, I think we step into this place of what's it like to just be? What's
Yeah.
it like to be a human being instead of the
Yeah.
human doing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Now, I apologize in advance. This is a TikTokism. Um, I was I was flicking through on my phone last night, just having a bit of downtime, and
Mm,
um, I think it was, is it Susan Sarandon or Sarah Sarandon?
I'm
Some
not sure.
famous actress. Anyway,
Right.
beautiful, beautiful, fabulous actress. And it was just like this little clip, and I don't know if it was an interview or a piece out of a movie that she was in, but it landed and it feels quite relevant to, the conversation here.
Mm,
And she said to this fellow, she said, "Why do you think people get married?" And he went, "Passion." And she said,
mm.
"No, it's to be witnessed."
Oh, wow. I just got cold shivers.
Yeah, and it really touched me. She said, and that's why, that's why it's popped into my mind, because
Mm,
of what you've been talking about with the way you get your clients to really tune in to what's
mm,
happening and the feedback loop that is being provided. Yeah, she was saying, you actually make a commitment to be present for the little
mm.
moments with that person, and
Yeah.
they witness and are present for yours. And
Wow.
that's what leaves us isolated and
Mm,
stumbling, isn't it? When we've,
yeah. We're missing out on that.
yeah,
It brings to mind about Dan Siegel. I don't know whether you've heard of his kind of explanation of attunement, and it's being seen, being heard, being felt. You know,
mm,
kind of getting gotten.
yeah,
Like I get you, and who can get you more than somebody that you develop an intimate relationship with,
yeah,
and it's kind of like, despite whatever whatever personality traits we have, that commitment, like you said, to say, I'm going to be here, I'm
mm,
going to hear you, and things might change as as the
yeah,
years go by, but ultimately that's a place. And we're social mammals. Horses are social mammals, so actually in some countries it's illegal to have a horse on its own, live on its own, and it's
wow,
so bad for their health and mental health, and we're the same, aren't we? Like,
yeah,
we're not meant to kind of be isolated and live on our own. And so for a healthy horse, they have their horsey partners and
yeah,
relationships with each other, and they're all different relationships and kind
yeah,
of that bonding. And yeah, there's so much they teach us just about through the way that they live.
yeah,
What
wow,
does enrichment mean to a horse? Enrichment, means like having a variety of environments. So maybe some trees, maybe some rocks, maybe some hills and creeks, or, you know, not a flat square paddock with a fence around it and nothing in it. That's, you know, that to a horse isn't enrichment.
Oh,
Like
that's
you're
right. It's like living in suburbia, isn't it? With
in a
one
little,
little row of
yeah.
pansies.
I won't say picket fence because I lived with a little picket fence for a while. But
Oh, no.
looking at your, you know, soulful and wild, that's exactly the essence of a horse. And, you know, that we have that essence within us as well, that kind of, you know, yeah, animal part of us that wants to be soulful and wild, and we've domesticated the horses so much,
Yeah.
and taken so much of their kind of wildness and soulful, you know, out of it. But there's nothing better than seeing the horses just going for it and galloping down the paddocks, and you know,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Yeah. Makes me think of I used to live in Cancun, and I remember my neighbours had all these boys, and I remember watching, it's as clear as day right now,
yeah.
seeing this teenage young man on this very feisty horse, an Arab actually, and just charging up this really steep hill, mane going,
Oh
and it
wow.
was it was full on, the whole hat, the whole deal. And I remember looking and going, holy shit, I'd love to be able to do that. Like
Yes.
you could just, it was emanating this
Wow.
power, you know,
Yeah.
and it was
Just
beautiful.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Now
wildness.
I'm just thinking, um, now I love your website. I've got to say, I had a read of some of your blogs actually,
Mm.
and I wonder, Pegasus Wellbeing. Where did you? I mean, I get the well-being, Pegasus.
Mm.
What prompted you to use that name?
Oh wow.
Just out of
Well,
curiosity.
yeah, it was funny because I'd just been so drawn to it, and when we moved here, I printed out a picture of a Pegasus, and I just stuck it in my office. You know, not
Yeah,
having any idea this before I did the training or anything. So then, when I was coming, you know, trying to sort out a name, I remember seeing that picture and going, "Oh my gosh, is there a way I can bring Pegasus, you know, in?" And the whole beautiful mythical horse that symbolizes like that wild freedom, but
yeah,
also with the wings, you know, like a horse has got freedom when they run and use their legs, but add some wings onto a horse, you know, they can go to any heights. Like that's kind of
yeah,
like the that possibilities, you know, like
yeah,
what is possible, and our limited mind or our limiting, you know, belief system or conditioning is stopping us to discover the wings like Pegasus and to fly above those limitations. I felt like that's what I wanted to offer
yeah,
participants, a way, because I feel like that's where my journey has been. There is no way that you could have convinced me that life was going to come okay again. You know,
yeah,
that I would find something that I'd love to do and be passionate
yeah,
about, that I would want to live, that, you know, that I love life. I love my life. I love everything that there is about it, challenges or whatever it may be, you know.
yeah,
And I've also got a meaningful spiritual relationship with my daughter now, and she's
yeah,
kind of like riding Pegasus up there, you know, and she's saying,
yeah.
"Go, mum," you know. And yeah, I feel like so many of us just stay stuck because we don't dare to imagine, we don't dare to create another vision. In, you know, starts with our thoughts and our minds about what could be open and possible for us. And
Yeah,
even, you know, the most traumatic history and pain and whatever we've gone through in life, it doesn't mean we have to be a prisoner to that forever.
Yeah. Mm.
And I feel the horses, I feel Pegasus is, yeah, leading the way.
Mm. That is beautiful.
Mm.
We should finish on that note. That's awesome.
Wow. Thank you
That's
so much,
beautiful. Yes,
Karen.
thank you for talking about this. I think I'm going to end up on Donington Farm and try out a session
Oh,
actually.
I was just going to invite you. I just thought, you can't, it's just one of those things that you can't explain it until you've
Yeah.
experienced it. Yeah, so I'd love you to come out
Oh,
one
that's a that's
day.
a that's a thing. I'm definitely going to do it. Have you ever had people actually cry when they are aware of that connection, when they
Mm,
feel or perceive that connection, when they
yeah,
show up in their body? So have you
yeah.
ever had anyone moved to tears, I wonder?
Yeah. Yeah, like it's very precious to be, it's almost sacred to be in the space with somebody that can
Yeah.
feel that depth of connection and emotion.
Mm,
And sometimes it's tears of release, and
mm,
sometimes it's tears of joy or recognition.
yeah.
It's whatever it is to that person. And yeah, I feel like, or a lot of people kind of write to me later because they need time to process what's
Yeah.
happened, and they go away and send me an email and go, I really thought about it later, and it just kind of connects the dots. Yeah, but at the time it's so much, it's happening in that present moment. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh my God. All right. So Margot Smith, thank you very much for your
Yes,
time. If
you're
anybody
welcome.
wants to jump in and experience this for yourself, I will be. www.pegasuswellbeing.com.au.
It's just got the Pegasus inner well-being.
Pegasus
Yeah,
Inner Wellbeing.
yeah,
Good.
because
Thank you.
somebody else had taken that one, so I had to put it
Ah,
inner.
inner well-being.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure that well-being happens on every level though, eh?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, inner,
Yeah.
outer, up and down.
All around her. All right, Margot, thank you so
Ah,
much. I'm
thank you,
sure we'll be
beautiful
talking
friend.
again.